Welcome, Wonder Women of the World. We have a special guest for you during the 1 million Women to Tech Summer of Code. This week is week 9, where we are working on blockchain. Specifically, so far, we have been working with Ethereum. However, we have an amazing guest speaker, Marta Piekarska from the Linux Foundation, who will talk to us about Hyperledger, which we mentioned briefly. And before we start, I would just love for you, Marta, to tell a little bit about yourself, because you're very international. I think you studied abroad, you've worked all over the place. Right now, you are calling in from New York at an ungodly early hour. Would you tell a little bit, just in terms of your career progression, for those of us listening, before we jump in?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Very well, yes.
Okay, great. Yes, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm very moved by your program, and I'm very impressed with what you are doing. And thank you all ladies that are on the line, and maybe some men as well, I hope, that are joining us here. Indeed, I am calling in from New York. That is, it was 94% humid yesterday. It's incredible. No rain, but 94% humidity and 24 degrees Celsius. So interesting temperature and interesting. So a bit about myself. I am Polish originally. I was raised there. I've graduated from electrical and computer engineering from Warsaw University of Technology. And then I always had that bug in me that really wanted to go somewhere. So initially I was thinking of studying political and social and political economics at Cambridge University in the UK. And I actually was admitted there, but started as a funny turnaround, started to do technical stuff and experimenting with it because I had a gap year, and decided after 2 months that I don't want to study anything to do with economics or humanities. I really want to be focused on sciences.
That's amazing. When your gap year was between which level of education?
Just after my high school and before starting university. So I was 18. And so it was interesting because it was my friend who pointed out that I'm great, or I clearly enjoy technical stuff, and I clearly enjoy sciences. And maybe I should be studying sciences. And I said, well, you're out of your mind. I'm sure that no one will ever appreciate me and sciences. I'm not talented enough, and so on. And then I just started because I could. And after 2 months, I knew that's exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. So it was very lucky, and I think the lesson that I learned there is that we never know what we are good at until we try it, and you have to try as much as possible. So that's basically the rest of my life, which is I tried that, I studied, then I figured I want to still leave Poland and I want to study abroad because I want to experiment with different cultures and different opportunities. So I did a year in Munich for this Erasmus program that is fairly popular in Europe as exchange. And then I applied for a dual degree between Warsaw University of Technology and Berlin Technical University, and I was accepted. So I went to Berlin after a year of master's studies in Poland. I went just to finish my studies in Berlin. The just to finish ended up with me continuing to do my PhD there.
Yes, because I saw that on your LinkedIn profile. Wonderful.
Yeah, it was funny. It was basically I did some cool stuff. I will admit that I did some cool stuff for my master thesis. My professor said, "Hey, how about you? You stay and do your PhD," and I was very excited to do that. So I ended up living for 5 years in Berlin. but I did a lot of internships. So starting probably year one or maybe third semester of my master's studies, no, actually, yeah, already as I was finishing my master's studies, I started doing a lot of internships. So I went to the US and I did a internship with Yahoo. Uh, then the next year, I already was graduated, so it wasn't an internship, but kind of a summer job with Apple. Um, and really wanted to explore it and see what more can I do and what is there beyond just studying. I was doing an industry grade PhD. So I was sponsored by Deutsche Telekom, which is mother company of T-Mobile.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked with Mozilla, so I've had a lot of exposure to the industry. So yeah, that was my PhD. That was my work with security and privacy. And then at some point, I uh, I met people. I decided I want to move to the US. I wanted to live in the US, mostly because I had a fiance there. So it was driven by men.
Yes.
And I applied for a job. I met some other people, and that was the important part, which is I met people who were really, really inspiring, and I was really fascinated by them. And I had no clue about the technology that they were developing. It was just people that I wanted to work with. And that was blockchain. And company was called Blockstream, which is one of the hottest startups in Silicon Valley. So really, again, trying a new thing and trying something that is exciting and different was more important than being comfortable in my zone. So
Marta, in the interest of time, I'm going to ask us to jump a little bit ahead and maybe get started with your wonderful presentation, because we only have, I understand, 45 minutes.
Yes.
You became, you had a very deep education, and then now you are director of ecosystem at Hyperledger. So I don't know, will you talk about what you are doing as director of ecosystem within this presentation?
Sure, I can touch on it. Basically, I'll talk a bit more about what Hyperledger is, and then as we discuss that, I'll touch upon my role. That is interesting. I enjoy what I do.
Wonderful.
So let's start with Hyperledger. Hyperledger. So this is me. You can't see me, but there's a little photo there. So as I mentioned, I do have some experience. I've been with Hyperledger for the past 2 years. Hyperledger has been set up as a project within Linux Foundation. And it's important to start there because quite often it is being confused with many things. Linux Foundation is much more than just Linux, and I'm sure ladies on the line have experienced some of the projects within Linux Foundation. We are dedicated to building a sustainable ecosystem around open source projects, and we provide the marketing, PR, legal infrastructures for companies that want to develop open source frameworks in any major industry. We have over 50 projects within Linux Foundation, which is something that people don't know quite often. And while Linux Foundation was set up about 20 years ago now, and it was set up to provide that governance and promotion for enterprises working with open source. Today, we have projects in every major industry. So there is Let's Encrypt that many people know.
Yeah.
Node.js is another big one.
Yeah.
Kubernetes is another one. These are probably the three biggest projects. Kubernetes is part of the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. There are projects that are much less known, and that's why I have this slide, which is, for instance, automotive grade Linux, or EdgeX, which is a cool project of IoT and real-time computing. So these projects gather together enterprises and open source community to develop frameworks within that industry. And it's all under Apache license. That's always common across all networks, and it's open to everyone. So while there is a benefit of being a member of any of those projects on an enterprise level, the technology, the working groups, and all of that is always open to public. So there is no the financial barrier to use the technology or get engaged with the technical community. About 2 years ago, we have introduced Hyperledger. And Hyperledger was set up as a project that provides legal, marketing, PR support, governance models, and all of the other kind of concierge around the blockchain for business technologies. So these frameworks may be permissioned, may be permissionless, but mostly they are focused on how can businesses leverage blockchain technology, being this unique and interesting thing that is emerging.
Marta, can I ask questions now, or should we wait until the end?
You can ask now.
Definitely. I have two a quicker question and maybe a bigger one. The quick question is, when you say permissioned or permissionless, could you briefly explain that for those of us that don't know the difference?
Okay. I will in a second.
Great, fantastic. Then going back to those beautiful projects, because 1 million women to tech is, well, all women and those who are identify as non-binary, so non-male. We were wondering often about, would you have any statistics or any concept among all these open source projects, how the contributors, what the ratio of the contributors is? So I don't know, for example, the Node.js one. Do we have any concept whatsoever as to what percentage of, I don't know, code or issues, or how many contributors are there who are non-male?
No, for a very simple reason. It's open source, which means that we are not able to track who is contributing. We maybe know the emails from which the pull requests come from, but these emails may be rabbit123, which you know, you can't determine if a rabbit is a male or female or transgender.
Yeah.
So it is we do not track that. We are looking at some metrics to see the health of our community and making sure that we have a good diversity, and we are very contributed to supporting diversity. So in not even 2 weeks, I'll be at Grace Hopper on a panel there. We are supporting a lot of different events. Our internal policy within Hyperledger is that we do not participate in male-only panels, which makes it a bit easy for me, because by the fact that someone invites me, it's in the invite definition non-male only. But our executive director, Brian Bellendorf, is very devoted to that.
That's
and
wonderful.
He not accept panels, and if he does, he simply suggests to the organizers a female who could participate as well from our member companies.
I must say to you, I wrote this to you in the email, but among the blockchain courses that we try to find and recommend as follow-ups to our 1 week little intro to blockchain course this summer, yours was the only one through edX, which we actually found the female presenters in, and it was such a joy. And we just wanted to thank you for that in the name of everybody watching. So, okay.
I appreciate. I must say that it is not. It wasn't designed that way. It's just that we have very good females.
That's awesome. Yeah,
it's great because actually over half of staff in Hyperledger is female.
Wow.
So we don't know about the contributors, and we also have very highly technical. So one of our community architects is female, Tracy Court. We have on ecosystem team, there is Mika, Karen, and then David. So we actually have 3 ecosystem females and 1 man. obviously marketing and PR is all females.
Yes.
So basically we both have what is interesting is that the technical part of our business is also driven by women.
Fantastic. Thank you, Marta. Okay, back to you.
So going back to this project, Hyperledger was set up as an open source collaborative effort to advance cross-industry blockchain technology. We are hosted by Linux Foundation, as I mentioned. So we are a non-for-profit that is within Linux Foundation. And we are a collaboration spans across almost all industries. So we have our members do projects in finance, IoT, supply chain, even things like fashion or music industry. And our vision is that blockchain promises to change the way that business is conducted and transactions are executed across industries. But we are not really sure how will it go. So we don't think that there will be one blockchain to rule them all, to paraphrase the rings. We believe that there will be many blockchains. And the way that you've been learning about Ethereum, we really closely collaborate with the Ethereum community and look at how Ethereum can support or support businesses. R3 is a member of Hyperledger, which is another big consortium, so we work with them closely. JP Morgan, who has developed Quorum, is also a premier member of Hyperledger, so we are working with them very closely. So we really are focused on collaboration and diversity also in terms of technology, rather than saying, yeah, you have to do one thing only, which is Hyperledger.
Mm-hmm.
And similar to Linux Foundation, Hyperledger has that modular approach. So we like to say that we have a greenhouse, and that greenhouse can come to our greenhouse and seed an idea if you have one, and if the community wants to foster it and kind of plant, water and let it grow, they will contribute to it. If, however, it doesn't take up, then it's fine, because not all plants succeed in beautiful flowers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all very community driven. And that's why we have 5 different projects and 5 different tools, of which I'll speak to in a second.
That's great, because I did a little research and I was like, "Ooh, we need an expert to give us the."
Yeah, it is a very, very broad spectrum, but this is because I like to say I do love brownies myself. But if then someone would tell me that I'm gonna have only a brownie till the end of my life, I would be probably a bit miserable, especially vegan, because it's hard to find vegan brownies.
Oh.
But this is the reason why we use different technologies and different blockchains, because we want to empower people to use them for different use cases. Mm-hmm. There is no one perfect blockchain.
Yep.
So the benefits of having that modular approach is that we have a very flexible modification of any component and common functional modules that and define interfaces, so that you can really, like, you jump into this whole big pool. It takes a bit to learn about it, but at least once you do it, you are able to do very rapid experimentation and have, again, a very diverse developer community. Because people are experts in their field, but they come together to work on various things. So here it is. Here's our modular
Yes.
house craziness. We have 5 frameworks and 5 tools. So when Hyperledger was started 2 years ago, we've been only on the market 5 years. 2 years. And 2 years ago, we were 30 enterprises that started Hyperledger. Mm-hmm. Big and small names. So, IBM, Intel were in the founding crowd, but also companies like Intellect EU, which is a fairly small business out of New York that really wanted to start blockchain. So we really empowered also small players to come to the market and build something that is probably today one of the most significant consortia in the blockchain space. Mm-hmm. Today we are 250 members, so we grew a bit over the time.
Well done.
And obviously an unknown number of open source developers that we are not even able to track. And we started with 2 projects. So our funding projects, and probably the 2 that are the most famous ones, are Hyperledger Sawtooth and Hyperledger Fabric. But as time went by, we've had people coming and proposing new projects. So Hyperledger Borrow, Hyperledger Indy, and Hyperledger Iraha are the newer to that field. And then as the frameworks were developed by the open source community, so Hyperledger does not have any developers on staff. We are all purely driven by our members and open source community.
Wow.
So as we've been developing those frameworks, we've seen need for developing tools, and these tools are Hyperledger Caliper, Cello, Composer, Explorer, and Quilt. Hyperledger Caliper being actually the youngest in our family, though quite developed already. So let's talk a bit more about each of those frameworks and tools. I have actually a short video that I can show you that talks a bit about Hyperledger, and let's see if the voice will work as well.
That's right.
Welcome to the Hyperledger Greenhouse, an incubator for open source blockchain technologies for business.
Can you hear the sound?
I can.
Okay, great.
Welcome to the Hyperledger Greenhouse, an incubator for open source blockchain technologies for business, hosted by the Linux Foundation. So what does that mean exactly? Let's start here with you. You're a business, large or small, participating in a commercial ecosystem. Your business partners and peers want to do business with you, but in order to do that, you'll need a ledger. This ledger contains a record of your transactions, along with many, if not all, of the other transactions in the network. It is vitally important to know that your copy of the ledger is identical to everyone else's. So you'll need a distributed ledger. It's a new kind of network database that lets everyone in an ecosystem keep a copy of a common system of record. But how does everyone agree on which transactions succeed or fail? That's where Hyperledger software comes in. This plant is actually software that each business runs on systems it controls to broadcast out its transactions with other parties and receive, validate, and interact with messages delivered by others. With any network like this, a particular software standard is used to keep everyone in sync. But there are other ways to build these kinds of networks, using different consensus algorithms and different smart contract languages. There will be many different ledger networks out there. Ideally, they would all be able to interoperate due to certain common properties, much like how the Linux community uses various operating systems with a common kernel. At Hyperledger, we're growing many different kinds of ledger technologies. Here, you'll find communities of software developers working together to propel open source blockchain frameworks and tools into the future to deployment and adoption. Businesses with strict blockchain requirements trust Hyperledger because it's hosted by the Linux Foundation, and its projects are developed by an open source community. Developers can collaborate on a global level across company and industry lines to create innovative, modular open source components and platforms. It's this open source approach that allows for the kind of transparency, longevity, collaboration, community, and of course, security that blockchain needs to become more mainstream, which is what Hyperledger is all about. Hyperledger projects are meant to help you focus on developing your business solutions and feel confident that the legal, technical, and organizational infrastructure is in place, thanks to Hyperledger and the Linux Foundation. These are all open source projects, and anyone is welcome to pick them up and use them. No fee or permission required. Of course, this only represents a fraction of what open source blockchain technologies can do, now and in the future. So it's time to ask yourself, who will you trust with your trust network?
Okay, so now you've seen it all.
Round of
I don't have to speak at all. Yes, when we were setting up Hyperledger, it was early days, and we kind of looked at it and said, well, you know what? there is one thing that we all have to realize. Cryptocurrencies are cool, and you may lose or earn a lot of money on Bitcoin, but when it comes to businesses, we really can't focus on cryptocurrencies, because with cryptocurrencies, it's not something that is very fit for the enterprise model. But the blockchain technology, the underlying technology, is something that promises a lot of useful applications. And this is what we are. We are focused on the blockchain, not the cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency we see as an application that sits on top of blockchain, and you can easily discuss blockchain without talking about cryptocurrencies, which I'm sure you covered in this program already. And because blockchain is so exciting, we see a huge uptake of the technology. Actually, World Economic Forum produced this white paper, and if you're looking for follow-up reading materials, I highly recommend it.
Yes.
The Realizing Potential of Blockchain. And they estimate that by 2025, 10% of world global GDP will be assets tracked and traded using blockchain-based distributed ledgers. So it's huge, and very interesting to see that study.
Marta,
yes?
There is so much good interaction happening. I just want to read them out to you, and whenever you feel like it, you could touch upon these questions. Is that okay?
Yes, absolutely.
It's really nice. I'm looking at the interactive chat, which you can't see very easily, so I will just read it out to you.
Right.
We have we are fluctuating between 22 and 28 live viewers at the moment. Many people first just greeted you with coffee, and many places from Liberia, from Sacramento, India. We have Poland, London, Slovakia, and so on. And it's awesome to have a rare opportunity to meet individuals like Marta with a little nerdy smiley face. They were asking about the edX courses. Tomorrow in the day 4 class, I will share links to where to go from here. Question to Marta from Vanessa in London. What would be your advice for someone who is completely new to coding and who wants to find work opportunities within blockchain world as a developer? And if within that, as you could talk a little bit about what programming languages do you recommend to start with, for example, apart from Solidity, and also if there was a question about the women as well. Okay, Marta said, how would you address the legal implications that can occur inside each ledger network? Are the transactions in the blockchain accepted as legal proof? Oh, interesting. So the legalities. Priya Pravinder Kaur says, hi Marta, lovely to meet you. Often as lone woman in the group, what are the greatest obstacles to getting listened to by others? And then how have you handled these? And lots of claps for your video so far. For example, how do you have focus on your skills and ability and not the gender, or any other guidelines you could have for both career, for studying, and the gender issue? We appreciate.
Sure. Just grabbing a bottle of water here.
Sure.
To dry. So let's start with the beginning, which is how do you start with blockchain being non-technical? This is something that I think mostly is addressed by getting educated and not being afraid. This is a very, let's say, diverse community that encompasses both very technical and non-technical people. So don't be afraid being the non-technical as long as you want to learn. So I will do that. Sorry for jumping around, but you mentioned the edX courses. There are a lot of other ways to contribute to Hyperledger, but also to learn. So we have this course, which is the Blockchain Introduction to Hyperledger, which is free open source online course you can take at your pace. It is open to anyone. You don't have to be a member of Hyperledger and so on.
Yes.
goes from being quite high level and discussing different approaches and all that stuff to actually implementing it, so you can dive into the details. We have another course, which is blockchain understanding its uses and implications, which is much more business focused and talks a bit about what blockchain is, what are the blockchain technologies, but doesn't dive that much into the technical aspects of it.
Great.
So these are the two courses. We have a conference that is Hyperledger Global Forum, especially if you're local to Europe. I highly recommend to come and join us. We will be talking a lot about blockchain. We'll have workshops and a lot of discussion around use cases. So that's in Basel, in Switzerland. On our webpage, hyperledger.org/resources, see here in upper right corner, you have training. And that's where we list all of the training courses that are organized by our members. So we have members that organize training courses. These are professional paid courses, but we kind of want to embrace it. So these are the things. I'll talk about that in a second. We have, if you're at least a bit technical and interested in contributing code, Hyperledger is a great space to do that, because we are like an open source community, right? So we will be supportive and helping you out on your journey to contributing to Hyperledger and to different projects. We have contributing guides, and so on our website you can learn how to contribute code. You can get a copy of our repository because it's under Apache license, it's open source, and you can find best first bugs to work on most of the projects. So we started kind of flagging the bugs that are interesting and good for first-time contributors. We have a lot of collaboration tools, so join us on the chat, on mailing lists, and so on. If you want to get involved with Hyperledger or in general blockchain, but you don't feel very comfortable doing it from a technical perspective, we have community working groups, and they're again open to public. Anyone can join them. Anyone can contribute their knowledge and experience. We have identity working group. We have healthcare working group. We have public sector working groups. We are just forming social impact working group and trade finance working groups. So if you're interested, after this session, just email me. It's marta@linuxfoundation.org. Marta as in MARTA. And let me know that you'd like to be part of the ones that are just being formed. All of the other ones are on our wiki. So we have a wiki.hyperledger.org, and you can see there the calendar of the meetings. These are online meetings, of course, and work products of all of the groups. So there's a lot of ways to contribute, even if you're not very technical. Another way to contribute is we have on meetup.com page. We have Hyperledger channel. We have over 130 groups around the world, in every major city, probably. Actually, today we are having a meetup here in New York. So if you're from New York and you're around, come join me, and I would be very happy to say hi to you. Tomorrow we have one in New Jersey, where I'm also speaking. Also, again, most welcome people that are local to the area here. But meetups happen everywhere, and they are driven by the community. If you don't have a meetup in your city and you would like to start a meetup, this is also a great way to grow your career and develop connection. So if you're interested in that, again, let me know and I'll tell you how to do it. We are not, this is driven purely by the community. So Hyperledger is very hands-off. We don't tell you what you have or have not you don't have you have to do or you shouldn't be doing. These are discussions around everything blockchain and Hyperledger oriented, and we just want the community to be as excited about the technology as we are.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So these are the ways to get engaged. As I'm saying, we have hyperledger.org/community, that a web page that talks about it. If you are a researcher, if you're a researcher and you're interested in doing some deep dive, we have hyperledger.org/universities webpage, where we talk about different research projects and ways to get engaged on the university level. So for those of you who are nerdy like me, this is an opportunity.
I'd love to talk to you about it going forward, both the community and the university part, because one of the hopes of the Summer of Code was that each week we would also have a small hackathon challenge. And if we could have some little bit of input or support from one of the active community members who could help us scope out some kind of active little hackathon challenges. They could be issues from some of the repos, for example, right, that are possible to tackle, let's say, within a week. Then we could discuss something like that this could be one of the hackathon challenges for 1 million women to tech, and then we could support people to get involved in the open source community this way.
This sounds awesome, and there's a lot of interesting hackathons. So again, for those of you who are local to various places, Oracle is organizing a quite cool hackathon in October, end of October. It's in London, and that one will be focused on public affairs. So how can blockchain help government? And as far as I know, they already have some contributions from various organizations within the UK that will be working with them. So, again, an interesting opportunity to get involved and meet some important people.
Oh, I'd love to get the details and share it with the community.
I will definitely send them over. Yeah.
Awesome. Wow.
Yeah, and we one thing that we do have that may be of interest to the audience here is we have hackfests. Hackfests are not hackathons; they are gatherings of the open source community that comes together and talks how to solve challenges within Hyperledger. So, where do we want to go next with our project? What are the topics or modules that we need to cover within our community? And these hackfests happen once every 2-3 months, and we vary them from city to city, so that everyone are able to join at some point. So the previous one was in Amsterdam about 2 months ago. The next one is in Montreal, adjacent to our member summit. So first we have member summit in 1st and 2nd of October. This is a member-only event. But then 3rd and 4th, we have a Hackfest, and Hackfests are open to everyone. So if you're interested to joining us, please do. It would be awesome to have more female participation and more diverse participation of people of all genders and origins.
Yes.
So I would be very interested in having more people there.
Marta, because of the time, I'm concerned. I must. I'm afraid we could just keep going and going. I would really like to ask that we address the career question, if possible, and I tell you why. Because that is the crux of the matter. So, 1 Million Women to Tech is a 501c3 charity incorporated in Silicon Valley, and yes, we are aiming to to offer free coding education to 1 million women by 2020. That's our mission. But without the ability to then place these women and offer them viable career options, we won't be able to solve the underlying problem, which is the economic participation and opportunity. Could you talk about, in your view, you probably interface with a lot of the member companies and so on. How do you see, especially for career changers, how can they work themselves into the blockchain industry? And especially with, if this trend is going to be so strong as the World Economic Forum said, what do you see and what advice could you give?
Sure. I think that actually blockchain offers a very unique opportunity to grow your career that is not as stale as other tech industries. I think that from what I'm seeing, blockchain really empowers women and looks at women feel much more comfortable working with blockchain because it's such a versatile technology, and you don't have to be a coder to work in that space. There is a lot of need for people who are able to kind of translate between use cases and understanding the technology itself to the businesses and business participants who don't understand the technology but want to use blockchain. So there are a lot of opportunities to really grow. And moreover, the companies that participate in blockchain efforts most often will have some kind of women empowerment or diversity empowerment projects. So I find this community, because it comes from Cypherpunks, which is a group that has been very, very open to all kinds of queer people.
Yes.
I find the blockchain space being extremely positive towards women. I'm not in the cryptocurrency world. Cryptocurrency is still dominated by white men and sometimes becomes a bit weird. But I think that mostly blockchain space and even the cryptocurrency world is changing now. I think they are very, very embracing of women. I've never had any problems as a woman in this space. I've always been welcome, most welcome to join projects. And while in other projects, I had the situation where I would walk into the room and people would assume that I'm bringing coffee.
Yeah.
It has never happened to me since I started working with blockchain.
Wow, that's awesome. What would you recommend as you kindly shared those 2 courses for somebody who is aiming to become technical? What languages or currently, what would you say would be a good way to study?
So in terms of blockchain, it is interesting because most of the frameworks now are rather shifting towards using being very flexible. And so, for instance, Hyperledger Fabric and Hyperledger Sawtooth both support all sort of languages. So you can use Java, JavaScript, Python, and C++ at least in both of them, and they have slight differences. That's a longer story. So it is more of what language do you know already or you want to learn, and then kind of using it on blockchain technologies. So you're not stuck with one thing if you learn only one language, but also you don't necessarily need to choose the language based on what technology do you want to use. It's quite flexible. Obviously, Java is still the most prevailing one. I'm not fond of Java, so I'm not.
Me neither, but I really understand what you're saying. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. There's I really like Go, although Go is not as popular.
Not yet, yeah.
And this is supported by some of the frameworks. Python, I think, is one of the best languages to when you want to start learning coding. Python, I think, is one of the best ones to start with.
Fabulous, fabulous. In the Summer of Code, we have 2 tracks. We did the 4 weeks of increasing levels of Python. So week 1 was Introduction to Python, which is very gentle. Then we had Python the hard way. Week 3, we did the NLTK, so the natural language processing textbook with Python. And week 4, we actually dove into a Jupyter notebook and did a bit of TensorFlow and basic training in machine learning with Python. And then the second track is JavaScript. So we restarted again with Intro to JavaScript and then did mobile app development. And we will come back to JavaScript at the end of the Summer of Code. So that's what we are doing at the moment. But this is always a good question. Great, thank you. I have a very good question from Christy Tarantino. Marta, what are the countries in which blockchain development is predominantly blossoming in your view?
Yeah, that's a cool question. We have seen, so it depends. Definitely small economies like Liechtenstein, Malta, Bermuda are really taking up the cryptocurrency world and kicking off there. There are countries that are looking at blockchain from a more government perspective and using blockchain, not cryptocurrencies. So the small economies basically aim to bring as much business based on blockchain to the country as possible, right? So they have good regulations, they're supportive of the famous initial coin offerings and things like that.
Yeah.
While there are countries much more kind of stable economies that don't necessarily want to support ICOs, but want to look at blockchain as an opportunity to improve the government and improve the countries. And these countries would be the Netherlands, first of all. So actually Holland has huge support from the royal family. And there is something that's called the Dutch Chain, which is a big initiative towards empowering startups, and it's the world's biggest hackathon on blockchain. It's an ongoing year-long initiative. I would be very happy to send you more details of that. But
please, yeah. I'm taking notes.
Okay. It's complicated to explain, but it's an extremely interesting project. So we have the Netherlands. UK has quite a bit of projects. One of interesting ones, it's Dubai. I'm not sure if you heard about Dubai using blockchain. They have Dubai, funny enough, decided that the Sheikh of Dubai, Mohammed Al Rashid, decided that by year 2020, it seems like a magical date.
Yep.
Everyone, everything has to be on a blockchain when it comes to citizen interactions with governments. So they found 200 different use cases in the government space. They boiled them down to, I think, 23 citizen stories, as they call it. And citizen story is, I'm moving from city to city. What does have to happen for me to establish myself in a new city? I have to sell my car. I have to register in the new city. I have to get a house, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why they boiled down 23 use cases to, 200 use cases to just 23 citizen stories.
Wow.
And implementing citizen story by citizen story, all of the applications of blockchain that they've identified. They already have something that is called Dubai Pay, which is a payment gateway for anything from taxes through fines to some kind of whatever
registrations, whatever.
Gateway, and that's actually built on Hyperledger Fabric.
Cool.
So they are using either Hyperledger Fabric or Sawtooth or Ethereum, depending on the use case and the requirements of that use case. And that's also a good example of why you need many blockchain technologies.
Fantastic. Thank you. Wow, what a great question and answer. Jesse said, oh, Marta, I don't know if this is possible, but I'll just read it out. Is it possible for you to share the link of the deck that you're presenting today by any chance?
Of course.
Oh, wonderful.
I can send it via PDF or Google Docs, and you can download the PDF and distribute it, but would be happy to.
That's great. I could put it in the member portal for people to see. Great, thank you.
Yeah, it's all open source.
Open source. Okay, then fantastic. Thank you. Last questions, ladies, or comments? Can we thank Marta? I think we're really just scratching the surface, which always is the case, but that is wonderful because, to be honest, I think many of us before the summer of code might, have not really, well, maybe as users, but not really as builders have deeply used blockchain technologies. And so this 1 week intro to blockchain is really just giving us a very good chance.
I wanted to just quickly touch upon this slide, because you asked me earlier on the spectrum of blockchains and permission versus permissionless.
Yes.
This is something that would be worth explaining, and I promise that I'll explain it to you.
Yes, please do.
And most people really like this slide. So, so basically, if you talk about blockchain technology, there is that you'll hear permissioned, permissionless, public, permissioned, and whatever not. And it is a wild field, but that's boils down back to, again, what do you need a blockchain for, and what is your use case? So I look at permissioning, so permission versus permissionless, like the way of who can write to a blockchain. So what are the accessibility rights to it? And public versus private is the visibility, who can read from a blockchain. So that spectrum is important because depending on the use case, you want to either open to everyone or have it more limited because you don't want everyone to access your information. So if you think of cryptocurrencies, for instance, Bitcoin or Ethereum, it makes total sense to make it permissionless public. So anyone can read and anyone can write to that blockchain because it's a cryptocurrency. If you limit the number of people who can use it, there's no point in having a currency. On the very other side of the spectrum, you have permissioned private network, which is limiting who can read and who can write to that network to a certain set of participants. And it's not that on a permissioned network, you have to identify everyone by name. It can still be semi-anonymous in a way. It's a bit like, walking into a bar and, in the US or in the UK, when you walk into a bar, you get ID'd at the entrance, right? You have to show your ID and show that you're over the drinking age.
Mm-hmm.
But once you go into that bar, the bartender will never, check your ID when you order a drink or when you talk to a random person in the bar. You know that they're whoever they are, maybe they are a nasty person, but at least they are over 21, right? So they are legal to drink, they are legal to hang out with you and whatever else. So it's kind of setting a certain threshold that everyone has to pass and saying, okay, all of these people are in, and people who do not meet that criteria are not able to participate in our network. And this is important when we talk, for instance, about medical records, to be extreme. In terms of medical records, obviously, you don't want everyone to access your medical records, and you don't want anyone to be able to alter medical records. It is a certain group of people that should be allowed to do these things.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there is a middle ground, which is, for instance, the permissioned public network. This is really great for instance, 1 million women, where we are looking at, certification.
Mm-hmm.
When you issue a certificate that is just a paper statement, it can be changed, it can be fiddled with, it can be lost.
Yes.
But if you put it on the blockchain, it stays there forever, and its authenticity and proof of provenance is there.
Undisputable, yes. Wow.
But it should be only one woman blockchain that is allowed to issue a certificate that I passed the course. I shouldn't be allowed to issue that certificate.
Yes.
People. But anyone should be able to verify that I've taken the course and I've graduated from it. It shouldn't be a limited set of people who can see or verify it against the blockchain. So that's why we have that spectrum. And that's what permissioned and permissionless, public and private means.
Fabulous. Wow. Thank you. Oh my God, you should see all the chats. I will send you the link later on.
I would love to, and also please feel free to reach out to me and set or like email me your questions. I would be thrilled to answer your questions.
Thank you. We will. Lots of just lots of wonderful positivity. This is really the strength of well, at least I really enjoy this in our community. Priya Pravinder Kaur says, see you at the New York City, New Jersey meetup, Marta.
Oh, awesome. Just
yeah?
Come up to me and say hi and tell me that you've listened to it, and I would be very excited.
Please connect with each other, and feel free to, I mean, this would be a dream, but if you, Priya, if you can brainstorm a little bit with Marta around potential employers and things like that. You know, I don't know if Marta, you were told, but we originally just planned to achieve 300 women, and then we ended up with 19,951 registrants. So it's a little bit bigger than what we thought. And now we are thinking about how are we going to find, you know, employment for everybody. So Priya, enjoy. Ilona, can I ask about the London event? Yes, I will follow up via email. Anna Shushti says, blockchain sounds like a great opportunity for women with an emoji. Python is included, smiley face. Python lovers, we are in the right track. Clap, clap. Thank you for the inspiring presentation, Marta, says Anna Shustic.
Thank you.
Marta Bodora says, that's great, Marta. Thank you for your insight. Clap, clap, clap. Lots of thank yous, hearts and smileys, very inspiring. And lots of thank yous to us, 1 Million Women to Tech, and also to Jessie, RS, and Virginia Balsero, who had reached out to you, found you, and to you, Marta, for accepting. Okay, I think that's a wonderful place to finish. So I will thank you, Wonder Women of the world. Tomorrow we'll come back with day 4 of the blockchain week, which is the last day. And we will try to connect our private nodes and send each other test ether, hopefully either through our local machines, or if that's not possible for you, you can do it. We will also practice via MetaMask on the test net. So thank you so much, and see you tomorrow. Marta, if you stay on, you and I can talk a little. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.